Hey everyone, welcome to PowerShell Bytes, and today's episode is the beginning of a multi-part series on managing Mac OS users with PowerShell. And throughout this series, we're going to actually be building out commandlets or technically advanced functions for doing various user management tasks. In this episode, we'll start with creating an advanced function that will basically retrieve all the user accounts on my Mac or your Mac and retrieve various attributes for those users. And then throughout the series, we'll build upon that, and we'll go ahead and add a commandlet for creating user accounts, removing users' home folder or profile, as well as maybe, if I get to it, managing groups in PowerShell as well. And before I start, I just want to say one thing. If there's anything in these videos that I say that is completely incorrect and you know that I'm, something I said that's wrong, please go ahead and comment below. And as well as if there's anything where you're a little fuzzy about something or I don't explain something well enough, again, please make a comment below. I read all the comments and I will respond to them. And if I can, I'll go ahead and try to make a correction in a future video or maybe make a note on the video. So anybody that watches it again, I'll make a correction on wherever I'm wrong or try to clarify something. Anyways, with that, we'll go ahead and jump into it. I'm here in Visual Studio Code, which is a free download from Microsoft. It is a great code editor. And I also have the PowerShell extension. And if you want to follow along, you need to install that as well so you can author PowerShell documents here. Now I have this file saved here as a PS1 document. And I'm going to go ahead and create our first advanced function. And the easiest way to do this is to type in commandlet and go ahead and use the snippet function. If I hit enter, this will basically lay the structure out for an advanced function here. And I can start typing in the Get-LocalUser. This will be the name of our advanced function. And we'll go ahead and create a parameter. And I'm going to go ahead and define a string data type. And we'll go ahead and call this name. Now it does lay out some structure here with a begin script block and the end one, but I will go ahead and remove those and I will put everything I need into the process block. Now if we were going to accept some pipeline input, I would go ahead and leave these others, and technically if I wanted to I could remove this process block as well, but if I leave everything in a process block, it makes it easier to later add some basically accept pipeline input at a later time, because everything will be wrapped into the process block. And from here, we're going to go ahead and actually take a look at a local Mac OS command here. And that's what we're going to use this function as, basically a wrapper function to wrap around an existing Mac OS command to basically retrieve all the user information, and we'll store that into a PowerShell object, which could be used much easier in PowerShell rather than dealing and parsing text. So we'll go ahead and pop over to a terminal here, and we'll look at the man file for the DSCL command, and this is the command we will be using to pull all the information in. Now this is a pretty powerful command. It stands for Directory Services Command Line Utility, and it can be used to manage user groups and I believe a whole lot of other things, but we're going to use it in this example just to basically retrieve user account information. So I'm going to go ahead and jump to the end of this so I can show you the examples that the man file provides. And we're looking at this one here to view a record in the local directory node. In this example, looks at the local user, the www account, but we're going to want to go ahead and basically look at all the user accounts. So if I go up a little bit here, you'll see this read all parameter, or this man file technically calls this a command, and this does the same thing as the read command, except it basically outputs everything in a path. So you'll see basically you have the read all and then the path, and you can also filter things with keys here, and I will show you that in just a moment. So to actually show you this command, we'll go ahead and type out DSCL dot, this stands for the local host I believe, and we'll use the read all, I want to say parameter, but they call this the command, and we'll use the path, which is the user's path. And if I go ahead and hit return, this loads all the basically user accounts and all their attributes. I scrolled back to the top here, and it starts with all basically the some service accounts here and all the attributes that are associated with this. If I go back to the bottom, you'll see actually my local account here, and it has a whole lot more attributes. Now I don't want all this stuff here. I'm just going to pick a few attributes that I think are key, and you could choose more if you wanted to, but for this example I will only choose a few here. So we'll go ahead and keep the NSF home directory, the picture, the real name, record name, and unique ID. So I'll go to this other tab. So here I have the command built out, and I have typed in all the keys that I want to filter with. So I only want to see these keys, basically these user attributes, and nothing else. So if I hit return, this is more or less what I want. The only problem here that I have is this is all text. Now if I wanted to, I could use some text parsing tools to pick out the different elements, basically the different user attributes, but I'm not too fond of parsing, text parsing. It can be error prone, and I'm not very skilled at that. But luckily, if we go ahead and look at the DSCL command, I will jump back to the top of this. You'll see under options here, there is the plist option, which will put this into an XML plist format. And if I have XML, I can deal with that in PowerShell as an object, and it becomes a whole lot easier to deal with. So I have a tab here with all that, option here, the plist, and we'll go ahead and return this so you can take a look. I'll jump to the top of that document, and you'll see this is your standard kind of XML document. You have a plist element, an array element, then a dictionary element, and it looks like to me that all the user attributes are inside these dictionary elements. Now I got the command built out. I am ready to go start dealing with this in PowerShell. So I'll copy out that command, and I'll jump back over here to Visual Studio Code, and we're going to go ahead and save that into a variable. We'll just call this, say, user list, and I'll paste that command in. Now this will load that information you just saw. However, even though that it outputs it in an XML format, it is still text. So what we need to do is actually cast this with an XML document type by doing this here, and this will go ahead and create a PowerShell XML document that we can then use and manipulate here. Now one more thing I want to do is I want to filter some things out a little bit more. So we'll jump back to this plist here, and you'll see that there's elements here. There's the plist element. Now everything is nested inside of that, and then there's this array element, and all the user information's nested inside of that. And then you'll see again there's this dictionary element, and inside that is all the basically key values, basically all the attributes for the user accounts. So really I want to just load that information into the variable and not everything here. So what we go ahead and do is use dot notation to go ahead and expand the properties to only load that information. So if I surround this again with parentheses, I will then be able to use dot notation on that basic XML document to go ahead and expand the plist element, and then the array element, and then the dictionary element. And this will actually go ahead and expand the dictionary elements for all the users. And what I'll end up with is an array here that's stored in this user list with all the user accounts and basically all their key value pairs that the plist format put it in. So we'll go ahead, and at this point we basically need to loop through those user accounts. So I'll use a for each loop construct, and we'll just call the first item basically in the loop, just call that U, simple for me, and we want to basically loop through that user list variable, which is an array. Now what we're going to want to do is go ahead and create a hash table. I'll just call this user HT for simple. For a hash table, you could be more descriptive. Actually, maybe I should be hash table. And we'll go ahead and create a blank hash table here. to initialize it. And what we'll do is, as we're going through all the different elements, we're going to basically add all the keys and the values to that hash table as we're parsing this XML document. So what we're going to do is go ahead and access the key property, and we're going to go ahead and pipe that to the for each object commandlet. And then what we're going to go ahead and do is add the keys and the values to that hash table. So what we'll do here is do user hash table. We'll use the add method that's on the hash table, and we'll give it the key and the value. So first thing I could do is, the key is currently in the pipeline because I piped it over here, and to access that I use the $_ underscore, if I can say that right. And then we'll go ahead and access the value. But first we'll talk about this key here, and I want to jump back to the terminal here to take a look at that. And if you look at all these keys, the way this plist file made them, there's this DS attribute type standard followed by colon and then the actual key name. And I kind of want to just take this first part out. It makes it a little bit confusing, harder to work with. So I'm going to first deal with that. So if I go back over to Visual Studio Code, I can go ahead and use the split method, and what I want to do is split with that semicolon. And what that will do is split that string into an array, and I'll go ahead and go ahead and keep the the second element, which is this is using the index value 1, which would be the second, 0 would be the first. And just to show you that one more time, this is a string here. It's going to split that using the split method into an array with 2 elements, with 2 items. This would be in the first, and this would be in the second. And so we're going to go ahead and grab a hold of the second, and we're going to go ahead and upload that as the key to the hash table. Okay, here we're going to go ahead and now access the value, so we can go ahead and use the u variable for the user, lowercase u here. Actually, it doesn't really matter, but just to keep consistent, we'll use lowercase. Then we'll use the array property and then the string. And just to show you that again, I'll pop back over to the XML here, and you'll see that all these values are an array element and the string element. But the problem here you'll see is all the values are in these array and string. So if I just did that, what would happen is each of these keys would get loaded with all these values, and that's not the result I want. So we somehow need to be able to figure where in this loop we're at inside that for each object commandlet to associate the correct key with the correct value. So if I go back over, there is a way I can do this. And the for each object commandlet has a begin script block. And what I can do is I'll just initialize a variable to 0, and this will basically keep track of where we are in this loop right here. So there's multiple keys for each user, and we're going to keep track of which key we're accessing. So we're going to initialize it here, and then what we'll do here is I'll end this with a semicolon, and we'll go ahead and increment that by 1 using plus plus on the end of this. Now what we can do is use the index of that variable. Now what this should do is this will expand all the array and string properties, which will give us basically all the values, and then this will access the correct value, and then that will load that into this user hash table. Now we're getting pretty close here. We got pretty much everything we need. So now what we need to do, we'll go ahead and create a PowerShell custom object. So we type in PS custom object here. If I hit enter, this will type out the entire thing, which I don't want, so I'll delete that. And we're going to go ahead and then create a hash table that we're going to go ahead and build right now. Now I could, at this point, if I wanted to, I could just pass in this hash table if I wanted basically all the key value pair, the names that they give, which I don't, so I'm going to go ahead and build out my own hash table here to create the PowerShell object. The first basic property of my object, I'm going to call name. This will be the username, and I'll set that to the user hash table dot real name. Now here's the deal. Actually, I believe it's the record name, and I'll double check on that. If we go back to that plist file again, which we'll constantly be referring to, if you look at the record name here, there's actually two values for some of these service accounts. And if I actually type in the DSCL list and use the users, need to use lowercase, it is case sensitive, you'll see that they show all the service accounts with the underscore. So I don't really want to show both of these names, so I'm just going to select this first one. So I need to add a little bit of logic here in this to just pull that. So what I'm going to do here is do if this record name dot count is greater than 1, which means that it has basically more than one value, we'll go ahead and just pull the first value. So we use the index of 0 to pull the first. And if there's only one record, if I did this right here, this would actually just pull the first character. So I need to add some logic here, say else, and we'll just return the actual record name if there is only one value. And that should fix that little bit of problem. And everything from here is, well, much easier. So we got the hard part done. So now we'll go ahead and call the next property display name, and we'll set that equal to the user hash table real name. And we'll go ahead and let's say picture. We'll create a property for that, and we'll set that to the user hash table picture. A few more attributes or properties to put here. We'll say the home directory. I'll just call this home directory. We'll set that to the, I'm going to copy and paste so I don't mess this up. And the unique ID. Okay, this is all the properties that I selected, and again, you could add more if you wanted to. And in the module that I will be maintaining on GitHub, that I will put in the description of this YouTube video, I will probably be adding a lot more properties here. Now I think I pretty much got the basics here, so we'll go ahead and I'll save this, and we'll run this to make sure it works. So I'll jump back over to terminal here. And I got another tab here. I will type in PowerShell to enter PowerShell. This is important, otherwise this will not work. Now we're going to go ahead and dot source that PowerShell script we just made to load that function into memory. And I will end up creating a mod. I will end up adding basically all these functions to deal with local accounts into a module, which would be a little bit easier to deal with than just a PowerShell script. But for now, we need to dot source this to put that function into memory. So we'll use GetLocalUser, and we'll see if that worked. And it looks like it did. It for all the service account, it only shows the correct name, which is what I wanted, and it seems to load all the correct properties. You'll see some of these don't have a picture, and well, that's because those accounts don't have a picture associated with them. But under mine, I have a parrot, so that works. So there's one more thing we need to clean up, or we need to make work that we didn't implement yet, and that is this name parameter. Right now it just spits out all the local users. I want to be able to specify a specific user account to return, or maybe use a wildcard to return multiple counts. First order of business is we're going to go ahead and set the default value to asterisk, and I will show you what that'll do in just a moment. We'll go ahead and save that PowerShell, that custom object, to a variable, and that way we can control when it is emitted into the pipeline. So what we'll do here is do an if statement, and user will say like name, the name parameter. If so, we'll go ahead and return the user object. If not, nothing will be returned. And so this allows us to do is evaluate what was passed in the name. If nothing is passed, it'll use this wildcard, and that will return all the user objects. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. Go back to terminal. I will need to reload that into memory, and we'll test this out. Local user, we'll say xbob. That's my current account that I'm logged into. And well, I typed something in wrong. So let's go check out, see where I messed up. Oh, right here. So I need to look at user name, not just the user object. So this should work. Go back here, clear screen, reload this into memory. Type in GetLocalUser xbob, and sure enough, you see the account return. If I wanted to, if I didn't type in anything, that'll return all the user objects. And I can use kind of something cool here. I can type in, say, OB. And what this will do, since I have asterisks on both sides, any name that has OB in the name, this will return those user accounts. So it returns a couple user accounts. And that's pretty much it. Now this retrieves local user accounts from my Mac using PowerShell. So we just built an advanced PowerShell function that was essentially a wrapper function around an existing macOS command that retrieved user information, and we took that information and put it in a structured data object that we can more easily use in PowerShell. And throughout this series, I will be building out other advanced functions for various user tasks, and at the very end I will bring it all together and kind of show you how all this works together, and hopefully you can kind of see the power of PowerShell and how easy it actually really is to work with. So this episode, the code for this episode, I will actually post a link in GitHub below, and you will see all the code for this episode. And I'll also go ahead and post a link where I will be maintaining a PowerShell module for all the commandlets that I'm going to be building out here. And you're more than welcome to check it out, file an issue, or if you have anything you want to comment on, go ahead and do it there. You can do it at GitHub, or if you have a comment about this video or anything, go ahead and leave a comment below. And anyways, thank you for watching.